Welcome, everyone, to the It Depends podcast. I, as always, am your host. My name is Kevin Goldsmith. I am a Chief Technology Officer. I have been a VP, a Director, Engineering Manager, and I wrote a book. And that book was published in March of last year by Unit Circle Press. The book is called It Depends, Writing on Technology Leadership 2012 to 2022. And it has been my delight for the last 34 episodes. This is the 34th episode to share chapters from that book with you every other week. And this is a momentous episode because we have reached chapter 36, the last chapter. And I am excited to present it to you. It's also obviously a major milestone. We have now finished the book, which was the original raison d'etre of why this podcast exists. And after this episode, we move into a new territory. And so all that is very exciting to me. I'm very proud. The first episode was posted on January 20th of 2024. So we've been going for over 15 months now. So that is also something I'm very proud of. Never missed an episode, never delivered an episode late. That was, believe me, hard sometimes, but managed to make that happen. We still have, before we move on from the book, the next episode, maybe the next couple episodes, I haven't decided yet, we'll be focused on your questions. So I've been getting questions all along. Early on, I was answering them in the episodes. Instead, I've been saving them, and I'm going to be picking some of my favorite questions from across this entire journey to share with you all and to give you my answers. If you have a question, please send it to contact@itdependsbook.net, and I may answer it. I'm really excited to get more of your questions and to give you my answers to them. If you are interested in the book, today, it's going to be too late when you hear this, but today is Indie Bookstore Day. You can order my book from your local independent bookstore by walking in and asking for it. It is available worldwide. But if you'd prefer to get online and give your local bookshop some credit, you can go to bookshop.org, select your local bookshop, and they will get a portion of the proceeds from the book. And they now have ebooks as well, but you can find the book in obviously Amazon, but Barnes & Noble, all the other places as well, in both hardcover, softcover, and ebook, as well as audiobook, available from Audible and Spotify and all the other places you get your audiobooks. This chapter, this final chapter, the last chapter of the book, is called Succession for Scale. And when I wrote this, I was coming from having been a CTO in multiple scale-ups over multiple years. And having had that experience not only of being in that role, but of coming into these companies. And generally, as I've said in earlier episodes, I'm generally somebody that comes in after the company is established. So we CTOs or VPs or whomever, we tend to be typecast. And I am typecast as your scaling CTO, generally. So I'm the person people think of when the company has reached a certain level of scale and are ready to go to that next level. And whoever is in my role, that CTO role, is maybe not the person that they need for that next level of scale. So that means generally companies are reaching out to me, or recruiters are looking at me when a company has reached maybe like an $80 million ARR and is trying to figure out how to get to 100 or 200. Maybe the team is 50 people and thinking about how do we get that team to be 150 people. And so I've done that multiple times in multiple companies if you look back through my resume. So that's where I'm typecast. I have friends who are typecast as early stage CTOs, and that's the thing they love. I've done early stage, and I'll tell you, I was proud that I could do it, but it wasn't. I realized, you know what, that's actually not my strength. It was interesting. It was great to see that I felt like I did a pretty good job with it, but at the same time, I realized that that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want to get good at that. I'm really happy at being good at this person that comes in and helps companies grow. And it's interesting because obviously there aren't nearly so many scale-ups. And for the last 2.5 years, I've been in CTO of a company that isn't a hyperscaler, growing quite quickly on the revenue side, but a company that's been a lot more careful and cautious on the headcount side. So my team is growing every year, but it's not growing the kind of way where I'm like doubling in size or 30% or 50%. And so that's been really interesting for me. And it's also given me actually a new perspective on this chapter specifically. So when I wrote the chapter, I really was coming from not only interviewing and being in these roles where I'm scaling companies, and that's a succession for scale, right? But also where I was mentoring a lot of scaling companies and mentoring the CTOs or CEOs or executive teams in those companies. And they were having this specific problem I'm talking about. And as I talk about in the chapter, this is a known thing. This idea of the people who got you to this point are not necessarily the people who you need to get you to that next point. And it's also an understanding of yourself, saying that the skills that got me to this level of success are not the skills I need to move to that next level of success. And if you're in a growing company, and growing can mean growing in headcount, but it also can mean growing in revenue, growing in maturity, kind of reaching that next level of customers. And sometimes that isn't even a new level of revenue, but let's say you're refocusing or you're pivoting from being like a B2C company to more of a B2B company or a B2B2C company. And now what you need in that executive team in the company leadership is maybe something that different than you've been asking for. It's these kind of changes in companies where we're either doing a step change because the company has reached a certain level of success, and to achieve the next level of success, we need a more experienced leadership team, or sometimes it's just a leadership team with a different set of experience or a different set of skills, not even a more experienced team. And you look at the current exec team and you say, can these people get there, or are these people ready for that? And sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. And it's very different at the director level, the VP level, the C level, than it is at the individual contributor or the engineering manager level. And that's just by the nature of the way companies work. So an individual developer, the company shifts from a B2C to a B2B, or the company grows 2x in headcount. Individual developer, their work is going to change because they'll probably be working on less things, be more focused in the things they work on. That's the nature of what happens as a company grows. Individuals work on fewer things. But also, for an engineering manager, it's not like when there are twice as many engineers in the company that the engineering manager is necessarily managing twice as many people. But at the director level, at the VP level, and at the C level, it's a very different story. And again, just the nature of the way companies work. And for those individual contributors, for those engineering managers, they may need to develop new skills, or for them to move to the next level in their career, they may need to be mentored differently, or they may need to do things slightly differently, but you're not going to replace them to find somebody that's already done it. Whereas at the exec level, hopefully you're getting some development, some mentorship to grow as the company grows. But I'll tell you, generally, that's not common, certainly at the C level, probably not at the VP level. C levels, I try to mentor my directs. I really do. And I think I do pretty well. I've worked now as a C level or as a VP level in multiple companies. And I can tell you, nobody's mentoring a VP. Nobody's mentoring a CTO. They don't have time. The CEO doesn't have time to mentor you. They'll give you feedback when they need to. And it's no diss on CEOs. But if you're, for example, an engineering manager today, and your director is giving you like a lot of feedback and really working to help you develop, and you appreciate it, which you should, and you're excited about it and how this means for your growth path, and you think, oh, great, when I someday become a director, when I someday become a VP, I can't wait to be mentored by the CTO or mentored by the CEO. And what I'll tell you is that almost never happens because those people are very, very busy running a company, and they kind of expect the people that report to them to know how to do their job. They're not there to teach you how to do their job. So when I talk about the people who are in these roles, when that inflection point comes, that business pivot, that scaling pivot comes, it's incumbent on you, if you're at that level, to have already anticipated the changes you need to make and have made them already, so that you're ready to be a leader in this new organization, because it really becomes a new organization. And because that's generally incumbent on you to figure out, that doesn't happen very often, which is when somebody like me will sometimes be hired, because the person who's in that role, the company's grown past them. The company is now at a different level. They haven't been able to keep up for one reason or another. And now they're in a place where somebody else needs to come in to take over that role, somebody who can manage that kind of bigger organization. And I say that as me being the person that generally comes in and replaces oftentimes like the founding CTO. That's happened 3 times for me. Or replacing a prior CTO who maybe got that company to that point, but wasn't the person to get it to the next point, even if they aren't the founder. So that's also happened to me. So that is for me, because I'm not the founding CTO. That means usually I'm replacing the founding CTO because the company has grown to a point where they haven't grown as the company's grown. You have to grow faster than the company does if you expect to continue to grow with the company. And it's also the same reason why, if my current company grows someday to be a $5 billion company or a 10,000 employee company, while I'd like to think I can continue to grow, realistically, at some point, I will no longer be the right person for the job. They'll have to find somebody who's got that level of experience. And I am fully cognizant of that because I wrote a chapter called Succession for Scale. And that's fine by me. I've been that person sometimes that is mentoring an executive team to say, you know what, the people that are in these roles, you want to be loyal to them because they've worked really hard for you. And it's not them being bad people. It's them not being ready for the next stage of company growth. That's half about what the chapter is about. The other half of what the chapter is about is, how do you build a company with that expectation in mind? How do you know when it is time? And how do you build it so that person who's worked so hard to get the company to this point isn't feeling like the company's given up on them? How do you arrange your company so that this is a natural thing, this is an expected thing, and this isn't a situation where there's bad feeling? How do you design this into the culture of your company, that this is what we do? There was one company I worked at where my boss said to me that basically I was the CTO they needed for now. It was very explicit. And on one level, it's a weird thing to see in a job offer, because you kind of expect a job offer to say, you're our forever CTO. But at the same time, it was honest, and it set an expectation. I was the person they needed for now. So it was up to me to figure out how I could grow as a company grows. Because at a certain point, because that was a scaling company, at a certain point, it might grow beyond me if I didn't make sure either I was growing or realize that the company had grown past me, and then do the self-aware thing and step out or make that known that I recognize that. Obviously, better for you to recognize it than for you not to recognize it. And as I talk about in the chapter, the people around you recognize it. And so all of a sudden, you're in a bad state there. So I wanted to end the book with this chapter because it's talking about not only self-realization, it's also talking about culture. It's also talking about being very deliberate. And these are all the themes that are throughout the whole book. So it made a good way to end the book. The first chapter being about failure and using failure to learn and failure to grow. The last chapter about growing, but also realizing when the situation has grown past you and how to do that in a good way. I hope you've appreciated that. Again, if you have questions on this chapter or any chapter in the book or anything that has come up in the podcast, please send your questions to contact@itdependsbook.net. You can also find me on Blue Sky. I'm Kevin Goldsmith on Blue Sky. You can send me messages on LinkedIn. I'm on every other social network as well. I don't read them as often as I read Blue Sky these days, but you can also send me messages there. I'm generally Kevin Goldsmith on all of those. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Mastodon by my name. So you can also ask me questions there. I look forward to getting your questions. I look forward to answering them. And now I present to you the final chapter of It Depends, Writing on Technology Leadership 2012 to 2022, Succession for Scale. Succession for Scale, originally published on November 29th, 2020. Recently, I've been thinking about how the role of the executive in a scaling startup evolves. As a senior leader in a growing company, you need to be scaling faster than the organization. You grow by scaling yourself and the leaders in your team more quickly than the business. This fact is well known and is covered excellently in such books as 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel and Blake Masters, and The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. Even if you are aware of this fundamental requirement, it is still challenging to recognize when you are starting to fall behind on that scaling. The people on your team who got you to where you are today and who are working as hard as ever should be doing better than they are. You may start seeing the signs: teams falling behind, tension between groups or functions, team leaders beginning to struggle with their work and increasing responsibilities. You might not know what these scaling problems look like because you haven't seen them before. Maybe you do recognize them, but your loyalty to your team lets them go on longer than they should. You can get away with that for a while. Eventually, your boss, the CEO, the board, or your peers start to recognize the growing gaps in your organization between where you are and where you need to be. In a company with a good culture, they will let you know. In a company with a less open culture, your peers may notice but not feel like it is their place to say. It will be nearly too late when the problems are apparent outside your team. When these problems first arise, you need to put together a plan. You must act immediately if you miss the early signs and the challenges are visible outside your team. You need to bring in new talent who can help close that gap. It will take time to do that. If you choose to redouble your efforts to mentor the existing folks, you will only fall further behind. Either you missed your mentorship window, your leaders need more mentorship than you can provide, or they are not yet ready to take on the new responsibilities in their role, even with mentorship. Replacing people who have historically done well in their roles can seem cruel, which is why it is hard. It feels disloyal to the people who have been loyal to your company and helped build it with you. It is not their fault. If you don't make those hard choices, though, they will be made for you by the person your boss or the board hires to replace you. It doesn't have to be this way. We have an assumption that in a growing company, people will remain in the roles they have had and newer employees will come in below them. This assumption is one of the exciting incentives of joining a startup. It can be a career accelerator. Indeed, there are many stories of early startup employees remaining in their senior leadership roles through rapid growth and past the point of going public. Very few people are capable of this kind of speedy personal development, however. Instead, we should be explicit about this challenge of growing a company. We should build a culture that acknowledges and celebrates this fundamental fact. Let people you hire know that you will support their growth, but be honest that if the company is scaling faster than they are, they may need to help hire the person who will help them with the next phase in their role. Reid Hoffman talks about these ideas in his book, The Alliance. He discusses creating a tour of duty, a compact of set length between the employer and the employee that does not make expectations beyond that time. I advocate for a more balanced and sustainable approach for companies that encourages employee development and business realities. Startups willing to hire at all experience levels and support employee growth can hire and retain better. Even those companies face challenges at their scaling inflection points when company leadership changes to the new business realities necessities. Suppose your company builds the concept of succession for scale into its culture. In that case, hiring your successor should be expressed as an opportunity for further mentorship and growth, not as a demotion or failure. Celebrate it as a rite of passage. Challenge the leaders in your team and give them the tools to recognize when this time has come and praise their self-awareness. Build succession for scale into your compensation structure and leadership career pathing. Ensure that the newly hired leaders train the people they replace to assume the role again in the future. When the position opens again, the person may now have the skills to step back into it. I hope you found that chapter informative. I hope you found, honestly, every one of these podcasts informative. If you've joined us somewhere during this journey, all the episodes are still online. I have no intention of taking them down anytime soon. For those of you who heard the last episode with me and Kevin Stewart, got a ton of great feedback on that episode. I knew, because I'd already heard from many of you, that you thought it might be interesting for me to talk to my peers and other leaders. I do intend to do more of that moving forward. It's a little bit extra work. And like all of you, I have a day job that keeps me quite busy. And so I'm not quite at that stage where I'm ready to hire bookers and all that kind of thing. But I have a lot of friends who are very, very smart and would love to share them with you all. And so I will look for more opportunities to do that again in the future, and stay tuned. Again, the archive is all there. I normally link to Podlink, but the episodes are available everywhere, on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, all the places you can find the podcast. And I will say a final pitch for a newsletter. The podcast and the newsletter will continue. I haven't quite decided if they will stay in sync moving forward. I haven't made that decision yet, but what I found from the survey, and by the way, the survey's still up. There's a link in the show notes. There's a link from itdependsbook.net if you're interested in giving me some feedback. But what I've learned from that survey is there's a group that reads the newsletter and there's a group that listens to the podcast. And there is some overlap, but not as much overlap as I actually expected, which is interesting. Maybe shouldn't have been surprising. Obviously, it'll be a bit different just by the nature of the mediums, but both of these things will continue. There's one more edition of the newsletter that comes out next week that'll have this chapter. I decided that both would have this chapter at the end to end it in sync. So the next issue of the newsletter will have succession for scale in it. In the following newsletters, they may start to diverge a little bit more. It really does feel like a milestone getting to the end of the book. It's been obviously a labor of love and a joy to try and share knowledge with you all. The feedback I get from you all has been amazing, and I really appreciate it. Keeps me going, keeps me excited to do this. And I hope that through sharing the book, I hope some of you have also read the book, obviously, because that was at least part of the reason for doing this, or listened to it. And in direct without all the extra chatter like this. But for those of you who appreciated the podcast, thank you so much. And I hope you keep listening. And I will see you in 2 weeks on this podcast. I will see you next week in the newsletter. Have a great week. Thanks so much for listening. Please, again, subscribe, rate, share episodes of this podcast on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for Answers to April for the music used in this podcast. To To hear more from Answers to April, visit answerstapril.com. This podcast is a production of Unit Circle Media.